Yo, what is up guys? Welcome to another episode of Slice of Shonen. I'm your host, The Cloudy Crow, and today I will be showing you guys 15 brand new Demon Slayer Mugen train scenes that were added exclusively to the television recap. Now this means that you could only have found these scenes if you have watched the recap yourself, or if you were lucky enough to stumble into this video. So the way that I made this video was by playing the movie and each of the episodes side by side, syncing them together perfectly, and then watching like a hawk, waiting for any changes, any differences, picking out the brand new added scenes, and then compiling them into this video for you guys. Now this video is going to be split into 3 different segments. The first segment is going to consist of all of the ending scenes from episode 1 through 5. And the reason why I wanted to do this is because I'm sure there are many of you guys that skip the recap entirely because you've already seen the movie and you didn't want to watch the same old content all over again. And I also wanted to do it for any of you guys that watch through the anime and then kind of dip as soon as you get to the credits scene, which would of course result in you missing the ending scene. And some of these ending scenes are actually really cool. So the second segment is going to consist of all of the brand new scenes that were added to the actual episodes 1 through 7. And then the final segment is going to be me giving my thoughts on all of the added scenes, the recap in general, and also my thoughts going into Demon Slayer Season 2. So, if you guys are excited for the episode, make sure to leave a like, and like I just said, Season 2 is right around the corner. You know your boy is going to be checking it out, so make sure that you guys are subscribed so that you stay notified whenever a brand new reaction drops. It only takes 5 seconds, and it is completely free. So if you find yourself enjoying the content and you're looking for a way to show your support, subscribing is the quickest and easiest way to do so. But without any further ado, here we will be diving into our first segment of the episode. Here I have compiled a bunch of my reactions to the ending scenes from episode 1 through 5 for you guys to check out. I had a blast watching through these, especially one of these ending scenes that cover a very popular manga panel that many of you guys seem to really enjoy. So I hope you guys enjoy, and I will see you all when we come back for the second segment of this video. Oh, okay, this is cool. Yeah, let's hear what they have to say. Alright, you're definitely not ready for that, buddy. Let's take it down a notch, Inosuke. That's fair. Hear them all in one go. Sticks out even more than me. I feel like that's a compliment. A really great guy. Okay, nothing but good things being said so far. Super cool big brother. Talks a lot. Oh, okay. So it's kind of like a compliment and a little bit of a diss. Never whines. It seems like they all respect him. They have nothing but, well, mostly good things to say about him. Love him. Okay. That was a bit unexpected. My guess is that's gonna come into play when we get to Akaza, but we'll see. Taisho Eda secret. Okay. Let's go. Ah, it's too late. Kinda like that saying where people like pinch themselves to see if they're dreaming or not. Take care of them. Let's go. Get into it after this, because you know we gotta get in our short. What? He nearly got eaten by Inosuke? So now he's staying invisible. Oh my god. Inosuke was over there about to snack on an entire bird. Opened the door for Tanjiro to finish off Enmu. What? What? What am I looking at? Dude. Oh my god, she is brolic as heck. I will protect you. Dude, I'd be terrified of Nezuko in that state. Look, she looks like a freaking titan. And then she's just so confused. And look at how terrified Tanjiro is. Now, real quick before we get into the scenes, there is a bit of a bonus scene that I wanted to mention, which is actually a scene that was removed from the Mugen Train recap, and that was of course the scene where the headmaster of all of the Hashira, he was walking through the cemetery and he was talking about how he knew every single one of the demon slayers that passed away here by name. I don't know why they removed this scene specifically, because I thought it was really cool, and they do kind of hint at it in the opening, but I feel bad for anyone that has only watched the recap and didn't watch the actual movie, because I feel like that was an actually really cool scene that taught us a little bit more about the headmaster that they just never got to see. So I wish they would have included that, but ultimately at the end of the day, it's not a huge deal that they left it out, and they probably took it out for good reason. Alright, so here we are back for the second segment of the video, the segment where I will be diving into each of the scenes that were added to the actual Mugen Train arc, aka episodes 1 through 7. And these scenes vary from super short and subtle scenes that I doubt many of you have noticed, to very long and noticeable scenes that I'm sure, or I hope, some of you guys were able to pinpoint, but try to see how many of these you actually noticed while watching through the series. So our first scene takes place of course in episode 1, and this scene is unique from all of the others because here we actually get an entire episode of completely brand new content. So if you have not seen the first episode of the recap, I highly suggest you guys go check it out. There is a ton of completely brand new Rengoku content, and of course this scene is too long for me to include in this video, but over here, or I believe over here, there should be a link that'll take you straight to my reaction of that first episode, so I highly urge you guys to go check it out if you have not already. Now from this point forward, all of the scenes that I bring up, I will actually be showing you guys on the side of the screen as I reference them, just so that you won't have to go back into the episode and find them yourself. You can see all of the new scenes that were added within the convenience of this video. So, scene number 2 can be found in episode number 2. So this one takes place right before that little transition that happens in the middle of every single episode. And before this transition, we get this quick scene where we head over to the guy in the train that took all of the tickets. We see him lifelessly kind of staring into the seats. He's surrounded by passengers, and then the lights shut off. And then when they flick back on, he and all of the passengers are nowhere to be found. And I personally really like this scene because it reminded me of this horror movie I saw a little while back called, I think it's called Lights Out. And the movie basically revolves around the idea that like when you're in the dark, you can kind of see this vague like figure of a woman, but then whenever you turn the lights on, she vanishes, and when you turn the lights off again, she like blinks closer. So I don't know if this was an homage to that, but it had that same cool effect where like if they're here and then they suddenly vanish, which I thought was really cool. Now for the third scene, this one takes place in episode 3, and this one is also very subtle, but also very interesting. This one takes place, of course, in episode 3. I believe this one starts when Tanjiro is inside of his dream, back when his family is still alive, and he's just over there chopping wood like usual, tossing it into his basket, and then we see him head back into his home. He opens the door, and once he gets in there, he's of course greeted by his siblings. But how this plays out is a little bit bit different in the TV series than it was in the movie. So in the movie, when we enter the home, we kind of go into this perspective of like looking up at Tanjiro from behind his siblings, but in the television series, we're in this perspective where we're looking down on the kids and we can actually see what they're doing, and it looks like all of them are preparing dinner. They're like plucking the leaves off of vegetables. I believe one of them is also like using a mixing bowl. So this scene is super subtle, but what fascinated me about this scene is that I was sitting there waiting anxiously for something new to happen, and then I see this change and I immediately get excited like, yo, this is a brand new scene. And then it turns out it's just this 3-second scene where we actually get to see what the kids are doing instead of looking at Tanjiro from behind them. It was a really cool thing to see, but it just made me wonder, like, of all the things they could have added, why did they add this scene out of everything? And I wonder if there was an actual reason why they wanted to do that, but hey, maybe we'll never know. So for our next scene, scene number 4, this one takes place in episode 4, and episode 4, I absolutely loved it. 1, because the episode itself was cool, but 2, because we get brand new scene after brand new scene. If every episode was like episode 4, we would have been absolutely blessed in this recap. But in the beginning of episode 4, we see the guy, the henchman, working under Enmu. He was sent inside of Tanjiro's dream with the goal of finding his spiritual core and then destroying it. He finally gets into the realm where the spiritual core resides, and then he's immediately greeted by these little like children of the light that grab his hand and they actually guide him to the core. Now, so far everything is playing out here the same as it did in the movie, except they kind of expand upon it and add a brand new scene where after the guy drops to his knees, we see this massive chasm open up underneath him. It sucks him in. It looks like he's plummeting to his death, and then we see one of the children of the light kind of dive in after him, grab his hand and save him, which I thought was really cool for 2 reasons. 1, because visually it was absolutely stunning. It looked amazing just to watch. And the second reason is because that just kind of gave us another example of how kind of a person Tanjiro is. Not only did those children of light kind of guide him to the spiritual core, but they also saved his life, which was super cool. Now, scene number 5 also takes place in episode 4, except this one happens around the part where Tanjiro just got some sense smacked into him by his reflection, and now he knows he's in a dream. And the only thing left that he needs to figure out is, how the heck do I get out of here? And so he comes to the idea that the best way for him to get out of here is for him to decapitate himself. Now, in the movie, it's played out in this like very suspenseful way, and then he chops his head off very quickly and suddenly, and then we switch over right to Tanjiro waking up. But in the recap, we are given an extended scene where we go more into Tanjiro's mind while he's about to chop his head off, and you can really see this internal mental conflict he has, because part of his brain is saying like, we have to kill ourselves here in order to wake up so that we can save Nezuko, but the other part of his brain is thinking like, man, this is gonna really hurt like hell, and you can see just how much he's struggling to kill himself. And ultimately it just came off much more brutal in the TV series than it did in the movie, just because in the movie it was much more quick and sudden. Now, this next scene, scene number 6, was a bit more subtle than the other ones, and this scene takes place right when Tanjiro confronts Enmu's henchman that was inside of his dream. And normally in the movie we see this henchman kind of standing there silently thinking to himself, and then the camera is like swapping between him and Tanjiro as he talks about his experiences inside of Tanjiro's dream. But in the television series, we're actually given some visuals to match that. So while he's talking about how cool and how kind everything was inside of his dream, we also get to see visuals of that stuff that happened to him, including him falling into the chasm. So it was essentially the same dialogue but a different scene and different visuals to accompany that, so I thought add it because why not. And now for our next scene, scene number 7, we bump into another one of my favorite scenes that were added to the entire recap, and this one takes place when Enmu is standing on top of the train. Now in the movie, this scene isn't in there at all whatsoever. However, in the television series, we're given this additional scene where Enmu begins to explain his plan. He's kind of thinking to himself, but we get to take a trip inside of his head and figure out his plan, which I absolutely loved, because one of the biggest questions I had during this episode was, why do so many villains always hire henchmen to do their dirty work for them and then just end up failing in the end? Like, I couldn't understand for the life of me why Enmu didn't just go and finish them off himself, because he's extremely powerful. They were knocked out. He easily could have done it. But in this scene, he actually explains that the reason why he didn't do that is because if he would have gotten too close to the demon slayers, then they potentially could have detected his presence, and then they would have woken up and things would have gotten a lot messier. So that's the reason why he hired them to do his dirty work for him, which makes so much more sense. And I'm actually so glad that they added this to the recap, because now I have an answer. Now, scene number 8 takes place in episode 5. We're finally moving out of episode 4, and this one was actually really cool, but also very subtle at the same time. This one takes place while Nezuko is on the train fending off all the tentacles. She's kind of there by herself, and she has to protect the passengers from the tentacles that are trying to kill them and absorb them so that Enmu can get stronger. And during this scene, we are given 10 seconds of additional Nezuko content, which isn't much, but is still pretty cool, because I wouldn't have even noticed it unless I did this side-by-side comparison, and then I realized that we're actually getting an extended fight scene for Nezuko, which is pretty cool. All of the Nezuko fans out there have been blessed and they didn't even realize it, which I thought was really cool. But for our next scene, scene number 9, this one takes place when Tanjiro is like flipping out from the inside of the train onto the roof, and then we kind of take this trip inside of his mind. He's thinking about how Nezuko's on the train, she's trying her best, Rengoku's trying his best, Inosuke's trying his best, and so he realizes like, okay, I really need to buckle down and I need to put in work too. It's about 20 seconds of him thinking to himself, and all of this happens right before he runs over to meet up with Inosuke, and then they start like tag teaming Enmu. And then scene number 10, it takes place all the way in episode 7, so we completely skip episode 6. There weren't any new scenes. Well, okay, there was one new scene, but it actually replays over in episode 7 and it's actually expanded on, so I thought I'd just include it as episode 7. And in this scene, this one takes place right after Rengoku and Akaza have that big clash where everyone is left wondering like, wait, did we win? Did we lose? Did Rengoku actually land the blow? It's kind of like this pause in silence, and then we see Rengoku starts bleeding, and then from here we get a very subtle added scene where the camera kind of zooms out. We're now kind of looking down on everyone. We get to see the train wrecked next to everyone, and then the camera switches over to Tanjiro and you can actually see his face, and this is the beginning of when the panic finally starts to set in. Because before, it looked like Rengoku and Akaza were pretty close. Rengoku may be at a disadvantage, but this was that pivotal moment where Tanjiro realized, like, dang, how the heck are we going to beat this guy? Are we even gonna make it out of this? So with all of these 10 scenes that were actually added to Mugen Train, on top of the 5 ending scenes, we have a whopping total of 15 brand new scenes that were added exclusively to the Mugen Train recap. And now I'm gonna dive right into my thoughts. So first, I'll get into the good and then I'll get into the bad. So the good that came from this Mugen Train recap was the fact that I got to relive this amazing arc, because I absolutely loved watching through the movie. I had a blast watching through all of it, and getting to re-experience all of these cool moments again for a second time was really cool. And surprisingly enough, the ending was even more emotional for me this time than it was when I was watching through the movie. At the end, when Inosuke and Tanjiro and everyone started breaking down at Rengoku's death, when I saw it, it definitely hit my soul. And I don't even know exactly what it was that was different this time from the time before, but both times, as soon as Inosuke finally started speaking what was on his mind, that hit me in my core, man. I felt that, and this time I surprisingly teared up even more than I did when I first watched the movie. Another thing I really liked was the fact that I got to relive scenes that I had completely forgotten about. Like, for example, when Tanjiro finally slices Enmu's neck for good this time, and then we see Enmu freak out and all the hands reach out and start strangling the passengers, then Rengoku zips through and just slices them all to pieces. I had completely forgotten about such a dope scene, and I was so glad to see this again because it felt like it was completely new. Like, I had completely forgotten about that. But now that all of the good is out of the way, it's time to get into the bad. So if I'm being completely honest, everything that we got between episode 1 and episode 5, I'd be perfectly fine with. Of course, ideally, I would have wanted every episode to be like episode 4. Episode 4 had 4 brand new scenes within that one episode, and if that could have happened across all 7 episodes, I'd be a happy camper right now. But the problem is, when I first heard that we were gonna get added scenes in this recap, the first thing I thought was, are we actually going to get more Akaza versus Rengoku action here? And so I was anxiously waiting to get to that fight so I could see if we could get any extended fight scenes or anything, and we got absolutely nothing. But the main reason why I was disappointed was because I feel like there was so much potential there. They could have added a scene when the crows went out and relayed the message of Rengoku's death to the other Hashira. We could have gotten some extended scenes there. They could have extended the actual fight between Rengoku and Akaza. We could have gotten to take a trip inside of Akaza's mind, see what he was thinking during the fight. Or even when Rengoku had that flashback where he was talking to his mom, if they would have added like some additional information or like a cool little hint or something, I would have been perfectly fine. But the fact that we got absolutely nothing was just so disheartening, man. And so overall, after watching through this entire recap, I think I could only recommend people going and checking out the ending scenes because, for example, the buff Nezuko scene was really dope. I also really liked when all of the Hashira kind of spoke how they felt about Rengoku. I thought those two in particular were really cool, so I'd highly recommend that everyone go and check out the ending scenes and also the first episode. I'd recommend anyone to go check those out, but outside of that, I feel like all of these other additional scenes were filler. Like, they didn't really add anything, which isn't super surprising because Mugen Train is already said and done. And even though we did get some really cool scenes, like Enmu explaining his plan, or that giant hole that opened up underneath his henchmen, even though those scenes were super cool, I can't quite justify like saying, oh man, you should have watched the recap, because if I'm being completely honest, they didn't really miss much. Now, with that all being said, this ending isn't all bad, because although we didn't really get anything significant in episode 6 or 7, the next episode, which is going to be the first episode of Demon Slayer Season 2, is actually going to be an hour-long episode. So we are definitely getting blessed with the first episode of Season 2, and when I compare that to like the disappointment to the ending of the recap, it kind of balances it out. Like, okay, I didn't get what I was looking for in the recap, but I'm getting even more than I expected with the beginning of Season 2, so I can't be mad. I am super excited for Season 2, and I'm sure many of you guys are as well. And with that, I'm going to be ending the video here. Thank you all so much for watching this far into this video. If you did, make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed, comment your thoughts on the episode down below, and subscribe for more Slice Shonen content. And with that, I'm going to head out, so I'll catch you all in the next one. Have a good one.